If you have a thought or are currently thinking about forming a partnership, or if you have just formed one, did you ask yourself the key question, why? Why did you or do you want to do that? Why not going solo? What's wrong with having full control over your business? It might be the case that you didn't even ask this question because entering into a partnership seems such a natural thing to do and you didn't even consider doing it alone. If so, do you still think you should not have asked this question? Anyway, if this is where you are now, this lecture is not for you, not for this partnership in any case. What has been done cannot be undone. Perhaps you can benefit from my other lectures on how to fix a failed or failing partnership. The question is, however, important, because chances are that if you ask yourself this question and still ended up in a partnership, you may have got a wrong answer or no answer at all. I've listed here what I think is a pretty exhaustive list of possible reasons for going to a partnership. If you think I have omitted anything, please feel free to write in the comments below. The reasons for forming a partnership are listed on the left-hand side of the screen under the title Pros. We also have cons on the right-hand side of the screen. But before we get to the latter, let's start with the pros to see how solid they are. Well, the main reason why people consider partnership with someone else is because he or she has something that they don't. This may be a physical asset or intangible assets such as skills, intellectual property, etc. For example, if you're a product developer, you may need a production facility to manufacture a product, or you may need someone with marketing skills and experience to help you market the product if you don't have the relevant skills and experience. But do you actually have to go the partnership route in this case? Perhaps you may want to consider alternative ways of filling the gaps, such as employment, employing the person with the relevant skills, or outsourcing, meaning contracting with a third party to provide you with an access to the relevant resource, or various asset sharing schemes whereby you can have shared access to an asset without owning it along with other people. These are becoming increasingly common in the market. Next comes risk sharing. Any business has inherent risks, such as the risk that the business is not going to be successful and therefore you will not be able to recover the investment you made into it. The level of risk varies from business to business, but so does the appetite for risk. The more risk averse you are, the more important this factor is likely to be for you. So you may be tempted to mitigate your risks by sharing them with another partner or partners. But risks are the reverse side of rewards. So by sharing the risks, you're also sharing profits with your partners. The question is, will your partner's contribution to the company's, to the business's profit will be such that your share of them, of the profit, will not decrease more than your share in the risks? From risk sharing, we move to cost sharing. Indeed, each business has certain fixed costs that may be potentially reduced by sharing them among two or more partners on a per partner basis. But this will also reduce your share of profits. You do not need efficiency for the sake of efficiency unless you personally benefit from it. For this to happen, your partner must contribute to the profit generation at least as much as you, or prorata to his her share in the profit if it's not 50%. If he or she contributes less than this, you may not benefit from the cost reduction, so it will not be cost efficient from your perspective. We have talked about risk sharing or cost sharing. Now we can talk a little bit about sharing the burden of running the business. Partnership can indeed ease the burden of running the business if you're lucky enough to have a reliable partner. But what if you are not? In any case, sharing the burden of running the business is the reverse side of giving up part of control over your business with all the additional risks and burdens that may entail. Now, creative interaction based on a shared vision for the business can indeed be a very important factor of success in some businesses. So it could be a really good reason for going for a partnership. We can cite a few examples of extremely successful partnerships based on this model. Take Google, for example. It was founded years ago by two former Stanford University students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin. We know what has become of it. Now each of them is worth well over 100 billion US dollars. The possible caveat here that where the creative element is a key factor for the business's success, there are likely to be big egos involved, not always though, with potential difficulties and complication of the relationship. Finally, if you're looking for external funding, investors often view businesses with more than one owner as safer than the businesses with a sole owner. So you might want to consider this if you need to attract external funding. But this can hardly be by itself a sufficient reason for going for a partnership, can it? Now, moving on to the cons, which most of which, as you will see, are the reverse side of the pros that we have just reviewed. The first of them is the dependence on your partner that makes you vulnerable as you are locked in a relationship, and the cost of replacement is likely to be very high, higher than the cost of replacing an employee or a third-party contractor. Second, in addition to risks associated with your business, which may or may not be mitigated through partnership, you get additional risks associated with the latter, in particular risk arising from your relationship with the partner or partners, but also some other kinds of risks that we will talk about a bit later. The same goes for cost reduction, as you may in fact incur additional costs in managing your relationship with the partner if you're not lucky with the latter. Idem for easing the burden of management. If the relationship between partners is not good, this makes running the business much more complex and riskier than doing so solo. I would also like to add two additional cons that do not have corresponding pros mitigating their impact. The first of them is complexity and cost of separation between partners if the partnership breaks down. Of course, it is something that can be addressed and mitigated through proper contractual structuring at the outset, but the same applies to the other cons. And finally, the difficulty of finding a reliable partner, making sure that he or she is one, which underlies pretty much all the other cons listed above and underscore the importance of this element for the success of the partnership. This may look like a balance sheet where assets and liability balance each other. Even if this were the case, the question would still be, why go for a partnership where all the benefits are cancelled by the downsides? There is no net gain. Of course, it's not a balance sheet. All the values in the table are qualitative, not numerical, and it's virtually impossible to give an accurate assessment to them in the abstract without relation to specific circumstances. I don't want to use statistics to prove my point. First, I do not have reliable statistics on the number of partnerships that fail for any of those reasons. Second, I think such statistics would be misleading. For example, it's rather commonplace to say that about 90% of startups fail. It doesn't tell us very much about the reasons why they fail. Was it the underlying idea that was rubbish? Or perhaps it was the execution, poor planning, lack of experience or know-how? It's enough to scare the hell out of would-be startuppers, but in his or her specific case, the odds of success and of failure might be completely different. My point is this: unless you have a very specific and compelling reason to enter into a partnership with a specific person or persons on which the success of your business depends, you will be better off avoiding partnership altogether. There are so many alternative ways of doing business in collaboration with other people without getting tied up in a sort of marriage of convenience where divorce is both likely and very difficult and expensive. I compare this to marriage because it has the same basic challenge. It's so entirely based on the relationship between two or more individuals that it can be fully tested only when you get into it. But once you get into it, it's so much more difficult to get out. No matter how well you think you know the person, when you tie the knot, it changes the dynamics of the relationship and even the power balance between the persons to such an extent that you often find yourself in a different relationship with a different person than the one you thought you knew before. It may not always be so dramatic in a real marriage, particularly if you've been in a relationship for quite a long time, but in a business marriage, it's even more likely that the relationship will change dramatically. Perhaps for better, more likely for worse. It's a big gamble. I know all of that from my personal experience as well as by observing others. After about 20 years of various partnerships and one aborted partnership, I finally settled for a solo career and feel so much more comfortable. In the course of my long legal career, I served once as a legal expert in a high-profile litigation in London between two former partners who had set up one of the world's largest aluminum company, where one partner sued the other for his part in the business worth billions of dollars. While they settled for an undisclosed amount of money, the litigation itself cost millions. Well, I think I should qualify what I said earlier by admitting that in certain types of business, partnership is a natural and customary form of business. Think of lawyers, auditors, accountants, consultants, and etc. This is what I call symmetric partnerships. They're not without their own challenges, but they generally work and are rather efficient. I will elaborate in one of my following lectures on the difference between symmetric and asymmetric partnerships. My earlier comments apply mainly to the latter, the asymmetric partnerships, but that doesn't undermine my key point. The reason why symmetric partnerships generally work is because there is a specific business rationale underlying them, and which is peculiar to them. This goes to my initial question, why? To help you make the right choice, I have prepared and will share with you a relatively simple yet comprehensive test to determine whether partnership is an appropriate form of business, considering all relevant factors. Well, I said comprehensive, but in fact this is a simplified version of the test which includes only questions where there is a clear answer or clear alternative options. It doesn't include all the reasons listed in my previous presentation. The idea here is to provide you a sample test on meeting some of the more complex issues. Well, it divides into three blocks of questions. The first one related to the raison d'être for the partnership, the second to the personality of the partner, and the third to the main factors of success and the main risks of the partnership. Well, first, as I said, you should ask yourself the question, why do you consider partnership? And if the answer happens to be one of those listed here, do not know, seems like a good idea, it will be more fun, obviously you have no clue, and you shouldn't do that. Now, if the reason for considering partnership is because you need certain assets that you don't have, such as capital, skills, etc., as I mentioned before you commit yourself to a partnership, I suggest that you consider alternative ways of securing the assets in question, which might be renting, borrowing for assets such as money, outsourcing to third parties, and finally various asset sharing schemes or arrangements. Now, if you found or you know a like-minded person who seems like a good fit for your business, that might be a good reason. And here we move to the next block of questions related to the personality of the candidate. So if you already have a candidate in mind, the questions to ask are the following. First, have you already done business with this person, or is your relationship purely personal? Second, do you have the same vision for your business? Meaning, do you share the same long-term strategy for your business? Third, do you share the same values? And this is, in fact, a very important factor because by values we mean the key principles underlying your business, and unless there is a clear idea what the values and agreement on the values, there is no chance your business is going to be successful, whether it's in a partnership or not. Fourth, are you psychologically compatible? Meaning either a good fit or behavioral types. And as I will elaborate later in my subsequent lectures, all people can be divided in several different stereotypal sort of behavioral types, and the fit between them may be actually quite important and fraught with different types of sets of problems and issues. So that's an important element of the test. Then, what contribution do you expect your would-be partner to make to your business? Are your expectations aligned? Meaning your expectation as to his or her contribution and his or her expectation as to yours. Then, is your would-be partner ready to commit 100% of his or her time to the business on an exclusivity basis, just like yourself? Well, if the answer to question 1 is negative, meaning that you don't have any business experience with this particular person, then you should be very circumspect. And if you really think you need this partner, you should agree all the key points in advance, which, as a matter of fact, is a good recommendation in all cases. If the answers to question 2, 3, 4, and 6 are negative, meaning that you do not share the same vision for your business, you do not share the same values, you're not psychologically compatible, and finally, he is not ready to commit 100% of his or her time to the business, then, and you cannot get alignment on those matters, then it bodes badly for the partnership, and you would be better off staying out of it. Finally, the third block of questions relates to the main factors of success and the main risks for your business, which are two key elements in any business planning. And the first question to ask is whether the chances of success for your business will increase if you join forces with a particular partner or partners. And following from this, the question, by how much will they increase? Can you measure it? Well, the point here is that the partner's added value to the business must be more than his or her share in the profits for the partnership to be worthwhile. In other words, the total value of the partnership must be greater than the sum of contributions of each partner, the so-called theory of the pie. I will dwell on this later on. It's a very important element of the overall partnership strategy. But the idea is that the partnership is worthwhile if the addition of the contribution by another partner allows you to increase your share of profits, or your amount of profit that you will derive from the venture. In relation to risks, you should ask yourself whether the risks of your business will increase or decrease if you team up with specific partner or partners. Well, if they decrease, which I think is important, is only a possible conclusion for the partnership to be worthwhile, the question becomes, will the risks decrease enough to offset the inherent risks of a partnership? And by those risks, I mean quite a few things. First, that the possibility that your partner will ditch you, or the partner will cheat you, or the partner will not deliver what was expected of him or her. that there is a possibility the partner will divulge critically important, competitively sensitive information to your competitors, thus undermining your business. Or you will get embroiled in an endless traffic conflict that will consume your time and energy and money. And there is also a possibility that you will incur additional risk of liability if your partner acts on behalf, engages your partnership or your company in transactions with third parties without your knowledge or consent. And finally, one of the key risks actually relates to the partnership success. And that is that your partner will get a share of profits from the business which is disproportionate to his or her contribution to the success of the venture. Before I wrap up my lecture, I just want to emphasize, in case it wasn't quite clear, that what I said here applies to what I call full partnerships, meaning business arrangements where partners go in for full-time, long-term collaboration on a particular business with involving sharing of all profits. The term partnership is often used in a broader sense of all kinds of collaboration between independent businesses on a particular project without full profit sharing and usually on a short-term or medium-term basis. This is what I call alternative collaborative arrangements or light partnerships, to which I shall devote separate lectures, because I do think that in many cases they would be preferable and more sustainable option than a full partnership. For now, I just want to avoid any misunderstanding. What I said in this lecture may be perceived as an attempt to discourage people from going into partnerships. This is partly true in relation to full partnerships, but it's not true at all for light partnerships, for the reasons just invoked, on which I shall shed more light in my subsequent lectures. I'll see you in my next lectures.